Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Chasing Collectibles Catchup. I'm Tyler, and today we're going to do something slightly different. For the past few years, we've been doing the show, and we focus mainly on collectibles in the context of comics and TV shows and movies. But I'm a big music and vinyl fan, and my favorite band of all time, the greatest band of all time, is the Beatles. And I follow various social media accounts, centered on the Beatles and classic rock. And an account that I've really enjoyed following, I think, for about the past year or so, is Miss Skylar Moody, and she's someone I describe as like a Beatles, like, I don't know if this is the right phrase, or not Beatles influencer, or at least Beatles content creator. You're very big in the Beatles community,
Yeah,
and you
that's
make great
good.
stuff.
Content creator.
Okay. And so I thought we would have her on to come talk Beatles stuff and all content creation related. So Skylar, thanks for agreeing to come on. I'm excited to talk.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm a big Beatles nerd, like all the time. I'm talking Beatles stuff to the point that it brings my wife exhaustion. So it'll be fun to talk. And just to show you, I wanted to show you real quick the overlap between Beatles and comic book stuff. This is a comic book from the early 1970s. This is a Batman cover, and in it you can see they're not officially the Beatles, but they are a band that's made to look like the Beatles. And they're looking at a Sergeant Pepper
The
kind of inspired
influence.
cover. So it's there is overlap. So
Exactly. There's always with the Beatles, there's always overlap. You'll find references here, there, and everywhere, I should say, because it just you start looking at everything and you anything could be a Beatles reference, honestly.
right.
Because I find myself
There's
making too many connections.
Right. And I want to talk about that a little bit more later too, how like there's more than just the music. There is so much you can look into with the Beatles. So, um, I want to first start off, how did you first get interested in the Beatles? I know like sometimes I joke around is like we're I know we're probably around the same age, relatively younger. We were not OG fans of the Beatles.
No.
So it's
We were and we were this young.
we've actually held up pretty well. But what first got you into the Beatles?
Well, I grew up hearing them played in my house throughout my whole life because my parents, they're Beatles fans, but not to the extent that I'm at now. But they would play their music among other artists. And, it was always just kind of background noise to me. I didn't really pay too much attention to it. But then I started to get a lot more into music history when I got into high school. And I was just always fascinated with so many different music artists and, their impact on the world and, just the power that they have over their fans and like the benefits that they have for this community, like what they can do for so many people, what music can do. And so I started taking a music history class my sophomore year of high school, and of course we got around to talking about the Beatles, and I knew their names, I knew a few of their songs, but I didn't know that they had made movies. So my teacher goes, "Oh, I'm going to show you guys one of their movies, A Hard Day's Night." And I go, "They're in a movie? They're acting? What's this about?" And we started watching it, and I think I was the only one in my class actually paying attention. Everyone else was just asleep, but I'm watching it and I'm going, it's a bit of a hard plot line to follow, but they're funny, they're charming, they're cute, how could you not like these guys? And that was I remember it was early November 2014, and then just over the course of the weeks following, I started diving in more and more and more on my own. Like I took my dad's Beatles albums, he has them all on CD, and I started downloading them onto my computer. I started watching Vine edits of them because this was
Oh, nice.
2014. I was just going on all YouTube deep dives trying to learn as much as I could, and I thought it was only going to last a year, and now we're here today.
Yeah.
I got a whole social media page dedicated to them, basically.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And it's cool how timeless their music is too. How it can still kind of draw people in. I know Brian Epstein had that, famous quote about like, oh, people will be listening to them in 2000. And
Children of 2000 will be listening to the Beatles. That's my lock screen on my
that's
computer
awesome.
because I see that and
I'm
I go, he was right. And this is
Yeah.
living right here.
Well, I'm a teacher in my full-time job, and I have a my most of my records are at the school. I bring them home during spring break and summer break, but I'll play records for my students, and you know, I don't think any of them are as into them as I am, but like I can definitely see sometimes I play songs and they're like kind of getting into them. I've
Yeah,
had a
that's
couple of
the best.
students. I played the Traveling Wilburys, and they're like, "Who are these guys?" I'm like, "Who are these guys?" And,
This is my opportunity.
right, exactly. Um, that's so cool. So I know you started out, kind of listening to them in high school, and like you're at this point now where you're, making content all the time. So how did you get to that point where you're like, I'm not just going to listen and learn as much as I can. Now I'm going to like make content.
It really started in college because I majored in journalism. So I had this full intent of, oh, I want to be, a music writer, a music critic. I want to go, like review different bands and shows. I just want to start like talking to as many musicians as I can to learn their story and learn where they want to go and everything. And that's still a huge passion of mine. I don't do it as often anymore because I'm mostly, Beatles or at least short form content centric now. But I was really getting into that throughout college. And then that's when TikTok really started to blow up because it was, shortly before COVID and then during COVID. And, at first I thought I didn't want to download it at first because it reminded me of Musically. And I knew that that was an app that it was like, oh, only, little kids have that. And TikTok just sounded the same to me. So I'm thinking, no, I'm not interested. But then I saw a lot of my friends were on the app and I'm going, okay, maybe not. Maybe it's different. I'll just see what it's about. Downloaded it, just watching videos, starting to post some of my own, just the most random things I could think of. But then I started posting, a couple videos about the Beatles. Like I showed like a screenshot of a funny conversation that I had with my friend who she didn't know who my favorite Beatle was. And I was just going, huh, excuse me? How do you just look at my face? You already
Right.
know. But I remember doing that. I remember I did a story time of my first time meeting May Pang, and those videos were doing really well compared to, the other mindless ones I was making. So I'm going, oh, a lot of people like that I'm posting videos about the Beatles, I'm gonna keep this up. So then by the time I graduated college, I had all this free time. I hadn't found a full-time gig yet. So I'm going, oh, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna go on social media. I'm just gonna keep posting videos, see what this does. And it's just built out ever since. And the more my audience grew, the more seriously I began to take it. I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm taking inspiration from other content creators that I'm following. I'm seeing, the ways they edit, the ways that they tell stories. And I'm going, okay, how can I apply that to what I'm doing? And that's just kind of how I built out my whole page. And that's what I'm still continuing to do now. I'm still taking inspiration from those that I follow and just things that I see, across multiple platforms. And just a little tirade here. Like growing up on social media or growing up with it at least, it started to evolve as we were teenagers. You're seeing it from the start to where it is now. And I think over time, just being so fascinated with having that instant access to everything and being able to follow, YouTubers or other celebrities that I liked, I kind of just picked up. I think I didn't intend to, but I kind of just picked up on how, they edited their videos and the way they were able to draw on an audience. And I think that just stuck in my brain. And that's what I'm able to use now, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
No, that's cool. So cool because we're
Working
really
so far.
yeah, no, I mean your stuff is great. I really
Thank you.
enjoy it. Some of like there's some more like serious ones is more kind of like, there's so many aspects of the Beatles that you explore, which is super cool because like they're, at times there's like really serious heavy stuff with the Beatles. Other times they're just like they're really funny, the Beatles.
Yeah.
And I think they would have like it'd be really interesting seeing
Double-edged sword.
right. I mean seeing them today would it like if the Beatles were, if we had Twitter and TikTok in the 60s, you can only
Oh,
imagine what they would have been up to.
the Beetle Girls would be going, it would be mayhem. I'm
Yes,
imagining them making TikToks in the Plaza Hotel
right.
backstage at Ed Sullivan. Oh my God. I would
What
kill for that.
and I think another crazy thing is too, because I try to really like amp up to my students like how, unique the Beatles' success is when you think about it at the time. Because like today we have Spotify, we have so many ways of like connecting to the artists. Like the fact that back then you only had albums being sold and, so many opportunities to see them, like that you had this Beatlemania. I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy. And it is still alive and well today, with the
Now
fans.
we're extra spoiled because now we have all of the information right at our fingertips. We've got
Right.
Google right here. We have so many books published by so many researchers and historians. We can learn everything. It is, I kind of wish that I was there to, see it as everything happened. But at the
Mhm.
same time, I'm grateful to be where I am now and just look back and be able to analyze the way so many others are and, say, oh, why did this happen at the same time this was happening? And, kind of put together our own theories. So that's a lot of
Right.
fun.
Yeah, there's so much information out there. And I do want to touch on too, like the fact, you have a full-time job. How
Yeah,
is content creation on top of that? That must be challenging.
to say the least. It is it's exhausting, and I was worried about that when the job that I have now, when I started, I was worried, am I gonna, still have the time to balance my content and then, still go into work every single day because I'm not even remote. I'm in person 9 to 5, 5 days a week. And,
Right.
it's just all about trying to squeeze in as much time to focus on your content and shooting and editing and scripting and stuff when you're not at work because
Mm.
it's hard. You come home at the end of the day, 5 o'clock, you just want to
Just
crash
want to clock
out,
out. Yeah.
dissociate, do whatever you want to do. But at the same time, I know that now I have this responsibility. I have this page that I want to keep running and I want to stay consistent because if I fall off the wagon with that, then I'm going to go, oh, I'm not, doing my job. I'm not doing this thing that I love. So it's all
Hmm.
about just trying to find that. And it's hard. I still struggle with trying to maintain that personal life and then work life because it just feels like I'm constantly working. But, I've got support from friends, support from family, they kind of understand. They kind of try to help me and remind me that it is okay to take breaks sometimes and it is okay to step back if I need to. But at the same time, I just want to keep going. So it's hard trying to find that balance.
And that's a hard thing about social media stuff too, is like you have to be consistent,
Yeah.
otherwise like, you got to keep the
You have to
audience
stay top of
engaged.
mind.
Right.
But
And I
you
guess,
want to be the first person that people think of when they see this on the internet. And that's why I
right,
try to put myself in that position. And, it is stressful sometimes. I feel like I do stress myself out a little too much, but at the same time, it's the perfectionist in me and it's just wanting to, constantly be up there with everybody.
right. Do you have to kind of be careful to make sure, like, because I know, like, you love the Beatles and all that, but you also like immerse so much into it. Do you have to be mindful, like, hey, I want to make sure this is always fun, because like it's something you love, but also like, oh, I got to make this thing. Like, do you
Yeah.
feel that way any sort of way at times, or do you have to remind yourself of that?
Sometimes, I'll sit and I'll listen to the Beatles now, and then part of me is thinking, every time I'm listening to them, I'm like, oh, like what's a good TikTok I could make about them? I'm
Right.
listening to this song, I could make a video about this, but then I'm like, I need to take a step back because
Just enjoy it.
this is not what it was about in the beginning. In the beginning, it was all about just the music, the movies, the interviews, everything that you saw from them personality wise. And I'm going, those are the boys who I fell in love with. And at my core, that's what it's about. It's not about the content and just trying to, gain a huge following or try to like engage with a ton of people all of the time, which I mean, that's a plus. Social
Right.
media has given me that gift, but at the same time, it's no, I got to find that balance. I got to make sure, hey, Skylar, at the end of the day, this is your favorite band. You love listening to their music. It's not always about the professionalism. It can be
Right.
fun.
Well, so you mentioned these are the boys that we fell in love with. One of the videos, I think the video, my wife actually showed it to me on TikTok first, and she's like, "You got to see this." And it was when you got to meet Ringo
Yeah.
last year. Could you tell
Yes.
me a little bit about like how that happened and what was it like being like, in like just there with him? That must,
Like
I don't know what I
going
would do.
back
That's
into it right
wild.
now. Oh my gosh. But I have a friend who works for a record company out in LA. And it was the summer of 2024. I saw that she got to go to his birthday party in Los Angeles and interview him because they have a whole press line so people can interview him, ask their questions, document, do anything. And I saw she got to go and I said, how in the hell did that happen? I would love to get out there. This would be huge because she obviously knows my content. She knows what I do. And she goes, oh, remind me, at the beginning of next summer, I'll get you in touch with the organizers. And I'm going, I don't know if this is going to mean anything, but I'm going to try.
Right.
And it was the end of May, early June. I reached out to her again and I go, hey, I know it's still a little ways away, but if this was to happen, if I were to make this happen, I have to factor in travel, taking time off of work. This is when this is
Right.
when things are crazy. But she gave me the contact information for the organizers. So I emailed them and I just said, hi, this is who I am. This is what I do. Here's my social media accounts. I would love the opportunity to come meet Ringo and interview him because I feel like that would be, very beneficial.
Yeah.
And I kind of stressed the urgency. Hey, I need to know now. I need to, start
Got to
planning this.
prepare. Yeah.
I have a job. But they got back to me pretty quickly and they said, they just go, yeah, we would love the first sentence in the email, I think, was, oh, we would love to have you join us. And I screamed. Thankfully, I was outside. I wasn't even home. I was away visiting family. And thankfully, I was alone in the moment because I just screamed and I'm going, oh my gosh. And I remember I went out to dinner with my family that night. I hadn't said a word. And at dinner, we were at a restaurant in public and I just go, hey guys, I'm meeting Ringo Starr next month. And they all go, what? And they
Yeah.
started cheering, and then I had to explain everything. But then finally got to LA, and I was so paranoid the entire time. I was going, oh my gosh, I know that I'm gonna forget the question that I want to ask him. I feel like I'm just gonna, just black out. I'm just
Blank.
gonna
Yeah.
be right in front of me, and I'm gonna go, oh my gosh, because I had seen him in concert before, but I had never been that
That
close.
close. Yeah.
And so I got to the party. My friend who introduced me to the organizers, she was there. My other friend, Liam, was there. And so I was kind of, talking with them, and that was calming the nerves a little bit. I'm going, okay, at least I know some people here. This is fine. And Liam had been there. He had interviewed Ringo twice before. So, he had the experience. And I'm going, okay, you go first. I'm going to
Right.
watch you. So then Ringo gets there. He's, way down at the end of the press line, but he's coming closer and closer. And I'm going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And I'm freaking out. But then the second that he's in front of Liam and the two of them are talking, I'm right here. They are right in front of my face and I'm just watching. And all of a sudden, I just felt so calm. It was, hey, you're going to be all right. This is fine. He's right there. You're just going to talk to him. And I was telling myself, don't worry about whether or not people are getting, the right angles for videos or photos. Like, don't focus on anything else. Just focus on
Just talk to
Ringo,
them.
talk to him. That's all that matters. And that's exactly what I did. And the first you see in the video, the first thing he does is grab my hand to look at what I believe he was looking at my peace and love
Oh yeah.
tattoos. It was either that or the mini mic that I was holding, but I like to believe it was the tattoos because
Yeah.
I'd gotten them and he just grabs and I was planning on introducing myself and saying, "Hi, I'm Skylar. I'm a content creator. I do a lot of content about the Beatles and about your music." But the second he grabbed my hand, all of that went out out of my head because I just go, oh my gosh, I'm like, why is I've barely said a word to him and he's already holding my hand. And then he ended up pointing at my John Lennon tattoo. He touched my arm. He's like, ah, Johnny. And I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm trying to have a conversation with you and you are not making this easy.
Right.
I did the interview, I got through it, and I knew that he wasn't, too big on hugs, but I figured I would ask at least. So before he went away, I go, can I give you a hug, please? And he did lean in for a hug, and I'm going, oh my gosh. And all I could say to him was, I love you. Thank you for the best music and memories ever. And then he
That's
ended
so
up
cool.
away. I look back at my friends and they're just looking at me, big smiles, and they go, congratulations. And I'm going, oh my gosh. And that's all I could just stand there. I was just standing there in awe, just watching, he was still going off, but I'm just going,
I don't know, take a couple minutes to be like,
yeah.
okay,
I was like, I need 10 minutes. Give me 10 minutes and I'll be fine. But then
right.
he ended up going on stage. There were a lot of performers there playing some Beatles songs, some of Ringo's solo songs. They did the whole peace and love moment at noon. And then he ended up leaving the party, but then we all got to go inside and we got to mingle with everybody, eat some of his cake, the big emoji
Oh, nice.
cake. So
Yes, that's so
now
cool.
I can say that happened. And the funny part about that entire journey was that only my close friends and family knew that I was going out there to interview him. I didn't say a word on social media
Hmm.
about anything because I'm going, I don't know. I'm a bit superstitious about that. I'm like, if I even post about it, I'm going to jinx it
Something
and
could
something
happen.
bad's going to happen. So I'm like, I'm not saying a word until it happens and it's over and it's done. So then when I got back to the hotel, I was just dead exhausted, but I ended up posting a quick little clip just of me, talking to Ringo, no audio, just showing that I met him and that I hugged him. And I posted that. And I think I broke the internet because everyone's going, huh? What? how, who, and
No build
I'm
up, just I'm with
looking
Ringo.
at
And
all the comments coming in. I'm just laughing. I'm like, this is amazing. I surprise. That was the
yeah,
big secret I ever had to keep.
that's so.
But
I mean,
that's
he
you
seems like
you'll
such
never
a
know. If I ever go again, you're not going to know until it happens.
right.
Because
Well,
again,
he's always
it's that superstition.
right. Exactly. You don't want to confirm it. Um,
Exactly.
he's always seemed like, I mean, he's always been such a, seemed like a kind person and
Very.
such a severely underrated drummer. Every drummer that you talk, everyone's got an opinion. People that don't know have opinions on things, but then like you talk to any drummer and they're like, no, Ringo's drumming is amazing.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
and his solo stuff I enjoy it. I saw him in concert in, I think, October of 23 or 20, yeah, 23 in Atlanta with my mom. And then we're seeing him again. He's going to be here in Charlotte in
I'll be
June.
seeing him at Radio City in June. I was
Oh,
supposed
really?
to see him last September and he got sick, and that's when he had to
Uh,
cancel his last two shows. Then I
nice.
was,
That'd be cool to see him. Have you seen him in concert, right?
yeah, I've seen him in concert twice.
Yeah, he's
Round
so cool,
three.
and I love how energetic he is.
Oh
And
yeah.
the All Star Band is great. So
Oh,
I'm
I can say
excited
I
to see him
know.
again.
Correction on that. I've technically seen him in concert three times because I saw him at the Grand Old Opry in
That's
February, but
right. Yeah, I think I remember
it
that
wasn't a
video.
full-blown Ringo show. He only did a few songs, but I guess it still counts.
Yeah.
So it's something. I keep
So
forgetting that.
so I know that like that's definitely a highlight moment. What about because I've seen you've done panels, you've MC'd, like I saw like this weekend you were doing a brunch.
Yeah,
Um,
City
what's
Winery.
kind of what's kind of like a highlight, just being involved more so involved in the fandom?
I mean, aside from meeting Ringo, I don't know what can top that.
Right. I'm trying to, like putting that aside, what
I guess just really every opportunity is a highlight for me because to me that shows, I'm doing something right. The fact that there's people reaching out and they say, "Oh, we want you to be involved in this, like we want you to come host this or meet these people or, be a part of this community." Just every moment is a highlight because to me it's showing, "Hey, you belong here. You're doing something right. We want to welcome you in." And really that's all I could ever ask for from anyone or anything.
yeah, that's awesome. And I would say for the Beatles community seems I'm not as in I can mainly follow people. I've tried here and there on Twitter, like I'll post something and I'm just like I don't I'm like it's fine. Um but everyone seems very welcoming. There's like a broad, diverse group of people that like the Beatles. There's people who are older, people who are younger.
Mhm.
And it's cool how welcoming, at least from what I've seen, people seem to be, in the Beatles community.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. You do have, from my experience, there are some fans out there who will be, they'll act, a little bit pretentious, but that's the 1%. For
Right.
the most part, like you said, everyone's kind, welcoming, they want to, teach you everything. They want you to learn,
Yeah.
this and that and everything. Just because you want that to keep carrying on. You want their legacy to keep moving forward.
Right.
And that's part of what I do. That's why I do the content that I do, because I'm going, this is my favorite band. I know that they're going to be timeless, but I want to be, that one, at least one person out of millions that, helps keep that legacy moving forward and encourage others to do the same. And I know I've done that for a lot of, fans my age, younger, even the older generations. They say, "Oh, we love to see the youth being so
Yeah.
enthusiastic." And I'm going, "Yeah, there's so many. It's not
Right.
just
They're
me,
out there.
it's not just, the select content creators out there. There are so many people. And
Right.
that's the beauty of it all."
The kind of you mentioned kind of like the like some people who are, I guess, a little like 1% kind of gatekeepy. I
Mm.
I'm into Bob Dylan as well, and I'm sort of like I follow some people on Twitter, and like some people can be a little bit like you're like, what do you mean your favorite song isn't this bootleg from blah 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 and like this obscure? I'm like,
Yeah.
this is not
No,
like
it's
I've seen
not
a couple
about
people like that. I'm like, all right, you
God
know,
forbid your favorite song isn't, take 12 or demo whatever of a certain song. That doesn't matter. Your
right,
favorite song could be like the most popular song. I have come across many hardcore Beatles fans who I know them the way that I do, and their favorite song might be Hey Jude or
right,
Let It Be. And it depends on if the music hits you, if it makes you think of a certain memory or a certain moment, or if just the instrumentals or the lyrics touch you in a certain way, then that's what it does. Like I'm starting to get into Oasis a lot now, and Champagne Supernova is one of their most popular songs, and it's probably my very favorite at the moment, just because that guitar solo hits different. Like
Right.
I know, and God forbid, if I say, "Oh, Champagne Supernova is my favorite song," everyone goes, "Oh, you're not like that big of a fan," and it's like, no, I am.
That's just a
I
good
am
song.
a very big fan, but that just happens to be the song. That can apply to all
Yeah.
bands, all artists.
I was very surprised. It was last year. I was teaching AP Human, and I had a student who surprised me. She's like really into the Beatles, and she once told me she was like, "I have a playlist that's just nonstop wah wah from All Things Must Pass." I was like, "Wow, okay." I was like, "Cool."
That's incredible. That's
I
the
was like,
energy that everyone needs to
"Yeah,
bring to the table.
yeah." She did an end of year presentation on the Beatles and their drug use. And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's not have this slideshow out when the principal comes in." But I really liked it. It was really well researched. But
There, that's what we need. That was me in high school. That's
yeah,
what I was doing, that little
I was
baby historian. So I love
right.
I love doing that. I love knowing that there's still fans out there that are in that same boat I was in 10 years ago.
Yeah. Um, Before we started, we talked a little bit about Liverpool.
Hmm.
Um, and I went in October.
So did
What
I.
was your? Oh, you were in. We could have been in the same time.
Literally,
Not.
what day? Remember what day you flew out?
You said the dates memorized as all the planning. I think it was the 14th. Around the 14th is when we went. We went to London and then Liverpool and then back to London.
I was the
So
opposite. I did Liverpool and then London, but we flew out, my friend and I, we flew out on the 16th, I think. And we were out
okay,
there for a week. So we did 4 nights in Liverpool, 4 nights in London, but that's crazy. We
nice.
probably did bump into each other at some point, but I just didn't
We
know.
could have both been like trying to get an awkward picture at Abbey Road while the cars are going through
Literally,
and try not to get hit.
literally. Literally. No,
What
it
was
took a couple of takes. I was like, I'm gonna walk across this road 25 times if I
yeah,
have to. I don't care. I've got all day.
right. I know we could probably do a whole video just on the Liverpool experience. But what were your just, overall thoughts on going to Liverpool?
It felt like I was at home, and
Mm,
going into it, I had so many friends tell me who had been there before. They said, you're gonna get there and you're immediately like you're gonna cry, you're gonna feel like you're at home, like it's gonna feel like the best place in the world. And surprisingly, the only place that I cried was when I visited Mendips. That was because John being my favorite Beatle, that was
mm,
extra emotional. But just in general, like being in the city, I'm going, this is a place I've wanted to visit for so long. And I had friends already out there that I had made through the internet that I was able to meet and just, finally go to a show at the Cavern, finally be on Matthew Street. And I'm going, it's the Beatles' home. And now it feels like my home too, just
yeah.
because, this is going to sound parasocial. I promise it's not. But, when you're listening to the Beatles or any band for that matter, the more you listen to them, the more you dive into their history and the longer that they're in your life, they kind of start to feel like your friends or like your
Mm,
family because they become such a major part of your life that you feel that intense bond, that intense connection. And that's what I felt with the Beatles. So going to Liverpool, I'm like, yeah, I feel like I'm here hanging out with the boys.
yeah.
I'm like, I finally get to see your house. Hey, I've known you for 10 years. You're finally inviting me over. That's
Right.
what it feels like, basically.
Well, it's really interesting too, and my wife pointed this out because she's not as hardcore Beatles fan as I am. She jokes that I kind of ruined it for her because I'm like I make if I can I make all conversations about them, which is I need to tone that
As
down
you should.
sometimes. Um, she was really kind of most struck with like seeing like George and Ringo's houses because I think they were the like smaller homes, and
Yeah.
it's wild to think about. Wow, these are just kind of lower middle class guys living in this,
Yeah.
Liverpool, which is more working class.
Hmm.
I was just listening to an interesting podcast about the Rolling Stones and how the Stones, even though they're portrayed as being more edgier, I mean, they're from London, middle class. Mick Jagger was going to go to economics, school,
Yeah.
and he, but the
Brains.
Beatles are more so, coming from the, Liverpool, you know, you'd have
Class.
fights that they were in. I mean, like, it was really cool just seeing where they were from.
Yeah, you think about then where they started versus where they ended up. Like me seeing the house that George was born at and then visiting Friar Park a week
Oh
later.
yeah,
I'm going,
yeah,
wow, talk about a switch flipping right there.
yeah,
But it was like it all circled back. It started in Liverpool and then it just made its way up to London and beyond. And, it really was a pilgrimage.
yeah,
And I'm so happy, finally being able to do that. I feel like I've made it at this point. I'm
Yeah,
like, I would do
exactly.
it again, and I'd probably still get that exact same feeling.
No, it was so cool. I'd spend more time there if we did some London stuff as well. We saw some shows in the West End and all that. So that was fun. But I mean, it's such I'm so glad we went. Couldn't, if you're a Beatles fan and you got to make the trip.
Right. And like I said before, it was the most emotionally and physically draining trip of my life. But if I could get on a plane tomorrow and go again, where's my suitcase? I'll go right now. I'll
Yeah.
pack my bag and probably never come back.
Well, one thing I've got to ask is like, what keeps you interested in the Beatles for the most part? Because I'm someone I can have like hyper fixations. I can have things that I get into over time. Then I kind of like, okay, here's the new thing I get really into. But there have been a couple things I've stayed consistent with, and I'd say like the Beatles is one, and comic books is one. What keeps you, after 10 years, still interested in them?
I don't know because I felt like when I first got into them, I thought it was only going to last a year. I thought it was going to be another one of those, little hyper fixations and then I move on to whatever's next. And I have developed many more interests over the
Hmm.
years that they either, they come and then they stay, but I know that no matter what, nothing is ever going to top my love for the Beatles. And I honestly don't even know if I can explain it. I just
Yeah,
look at them and it's just like, I don't know what it is about you guys that, keeps you at the very top and just keeps you right in front of my face. But just listening to their music, I know I'm never going to get sick of this. It's part of my soul at this point, like
right.
I could never see myself becoming this invested in another band or seeing, you know, as big of a fan community as I have over the years. I think that's another amazing part is just seeing the way that, the fandom has evolved and how people just continue to keep coming in and it's only growing and growing and, seeing how their history is impacted so much, like being able, the fact that there's Beatles fan conventions, all over the world. I'm
Right.
going, I've never seen that for any other band or any other singer. It's incredible that it's the Beatles and we have this and the way that you can take classes about them, the way there's so many podcasts out there about them, just
Yeah.
everything, the way it's evolved. I'm going, this is fascinating. And I could never see this happening with another artist. I could never get that invested in another
Yeah.
band. I feel like it's just that sense of magic.
No, I definitely agree with that because it's hard to say exactly what I like about them because it's not, the music is a huge part, but it's just like I like them as people and
I
even
like you.
their faults are like fascinating to learn about. Like these were guys who had
We're not
really good
perfect.
days and had also really bad days. Um, and I think there's so much to learn about them. I'm a history guy, I teach history and social studies. And like when I was in college, I took a historiography, which is like the history of the history. And like there's historiography of the Beatles. And I was like, what? Like there's so much history content
Oh,
that
we
you
didn't even know
can
that was a thing.
write. And I was listening to a podcast. I was listening to the something about the Beatles podcast this morning, and they're on like over 300 episodes, and it's like there's always something more you can learn about them, which is wild.
Exactly. The content just keeps coming. And it's the same thing with social media. I keep thinking I'm going to run out of ideas one day, but then, things in the Beatles world just keep happening. There's topics that come up that, I want to talk about. I just want to share so much. The Beatles iceberg goes so deep,
Yes,
so
right.
much to talk about. You just, if you're able, if you do the research, if you see, just how deep their careers go and all the connections that can be made across the classic rock genre as a whole, you could spend years and years, the rest of your life, just talking about them.
Wait, I one way I try to get like some of my younger students into them, or at least appreciating them, is I'll be like, hey, you know how you like Taylor Swift? Like she loves the Beatles, or like you like Sabrina Carpenter, she also loves the Beatles. Like so many bands and pop stars and all that like appreciate the Beatles and you can like you were talking about you've got when they were on the Ed Sullivan show there's so many future artists watching them at home being like I want to be like them so like it's like impossible to fully map out the impact they had
Yeah,
and continue to have.
without the Beatles, we would not have nearly a fraction of the amazing artists that we do today. And
Right.
that's what's like if there was a world without the Beatles, you don't know there's just so much that wouldn't exist. I can't even begin to imagine it.
Is there something where like if someone were to ask you like hey what's a specific like topic or story that you find interesting like if you could just sit someone down and like explain this to them that you could think of that you could probably yap on and on about.
The way that John Lennon has been completely misunderstood by so many people out there because you have the headlines that go out there saying, "Oh, John was a serial wife beater, he was an abuser, blah blah blah," because of people will read one headline and then automatically
Mhm.
think that's the narrative about him. And as a major John fan, I will be the first to tell you that it's either what you see is either not true or it's completely exaggerated because he had his faults. There are plenty of things that I could sit and call him out for, like the fact that, yeah, he wasn't, completely there for Julian, or the fact that he did have, his moments of anger and frustration that would lead him to a point where he didn't want to be. But, the more that you research about him, you see that, like, he knew that a lot of his bad behavior, he knew, oh my God, why am I doing this? I don't want to be this guy. This is not who I am. And you'll hear, like, you can hear it from him himself. You can hear it from primary sources, the people that were closest to him. And you just know, like, he was not a bad guy. I was on a panel at the Fest for Beatles fans this year where we discuss, it was called John Lennon's Sinner or Saint. And, it's kind of that debate, like, oh, is he one or the other? And the answer that we came to was he was neither. He was
Right.
John Lennon. You can't box him into one category or the other. History is not black and white. There's plenty of shades of gray. And with John especially, you just have to be willing to, take that dive and go in with that perception and realize, okay, he is not, an angel sent from heaven above, but he's not, the devil in the flesh.
Right.
Again,
Well,
I could probably go on for
no,
another
I'm sure
20
you
minutes.
could. Yeah. Well, I
See how
think
long
I
we
mean,
go.
yeah, I mean, I was listening to the podcast earlier and they had like a clip of him talking. And you're like, man, he could sound mean sometimes. And sometimes the way he talked about Paul, it's like, well, is that fair? But then he just like you said, there's good days, there's bad days, he recognized those. And it is really a tragedy that like when he finally seemed to be getting to like such more of a stable place is when, you know,
Yeah.
we lost him. And like, you never know. Okay. That's a big question of like, what was going to happen. Not just like I
Exactly.
read a book that talked about, hey, he was finally, they were maybe going to do a Beatles reunion. But even putting that aside, it's like he could have been more present in the life of his present with his wife, with his kid, probably could have reconnected more with Julian. Like there's,
Yeah,
and
because he was starting to
yeah,
get on that track. And I give credit to May Pang for that because she was
yeah,
able to kind of reunited during that period where her and John were together. And, I think they did continue to keep in contact a little bit up until his death. But, I think that's why people always tend to go after him first because he's the easiest target. He didn't get a final say in anything. His life was cut short before he could really, even prove himself or say anything else to show that he was trying to, change the way that people perceived him.
right. They never, and George, I think when they got older, they started because I know like in the 70s you can find articles where they're like either George is mad at them, at the other Beatles. Paul is, Ringo was always the one that was like, I don't, Ringo,
Like, leave me
it's
out of
hard to
this.
find. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But like the other
He was
three
too
always had,
devoted.
if, but like, George got to at least get a little bit older. And I think toward like the 90s and late 80s, and he honed down some of that talk. But,
Yeah.
John never really had the chance to like get older and, kind of get that.
Exactly.
Like Paul, I think, is like now trying to kind of set the record straight and like he looks so
Yeah.
fondly. Oh my God, when the Beatles 64 documentary, when he's talking, he's like, someone asking, like, what would you say to them if you could? He's like, I would say I love you. And you're like, you know,
It's like you wish that he had the opportunity, but also quick little story about that. When I hear Paul talking about that, saying, "Oh, I wish, like, we never said that back in the day. I wish I would just say, hey, I love you, you're my brother, blah, blah, blah." So now, I say anytime as though it happens often, it does not. But whenever I've had the opportunity to see Paul in person or just have him be close enough where I can yell something to him, I always am screaming, I love you. Like, I'm just telling him that over and over because he is one of the musicians that has impacted my life so deeply. And I'm going, you need to know this. I
right.
don't know if you're going to hear me, but I need to say this. I need
Yeah.
you to know this because otherwise I'm going to regret that I never had the opportunity to say it.
Yeah. That's
The
awesome.
same
That's
thing with
beautiful.
Ringo. I met him. I said,
Yeah.
I have to tell him that I love him because I do. It's that bond.
Yeah. Well, I'm a huge I love George. George is such a cool figure, and it's interesting too. I think there was a video that came out. I'm trying to remember the name of the person who made it. It was awesome, awesome hour and a half video. I think hour and 40 minutes talking about the myth that Yoko Ono broke up the Beatles. And
Mhm.
that's something I hate. I think if you can tell someone's not truly interested in the Beatles if they say, "Oh, Yoko broke them up," I'm like, "Ugh."
There
But
were so many, they broke themselves up, and there were so many factors that played into it. Yoko was definitely one of them, but she's not the sole reason why they broke
we're,
up.
we're like talking about
There's
like
so much more.
George is like you got John and Paul, but then George starts becoming a really good songwriter. And it's like, I want to get my songs out. And they're like, well, you get two. And he's like, I would like to do more, you know? It's
So then, yeah, he's got that pent up fury. Hence
right,
him saying, I think I'll be leaving the band now.
right.
He was able to still be classy about it, even though I know, like, in his head, you could see the rage on his
Right,
face. And it's like,
exactly.
oh
And then
boy,
he comes out with All Things Must Pass, like immediately afterwards, like, whoa, he really did
I
have,
told you.
yeah.
One.
But that's just like you talk about all the different things you could look into. It's like there's books just on the breakup, there's books about their solo careers. Like it's just the more you could go
I
in
could
so
focus
many
on whatever
directions.
they could choose.
Also, I love the fact that the story that like Danny wasn't even like told that he was a Beatle till like later on in life, and he's like, "Oh, I forgot."
Found out at
It's like
school.
what?
That's the casting director's just like, yeah. And Danny just goes, excuse me.
Yeah,
That one always cracks me up.
yeah. Well, I know, like, so the name of our business is Chasing Collectibles, and we talk about, usually in the context of comics and all that. But I know you, as a Beatles fan, are you? I think I've seen like you've posted some of your vinyls and
Oh
other
yeah.
things. What are some things that you like to collect that are Beatles related?
Definitely a big vinyl collector. I try to get, the most obscure albums that I can find, aside
Mhm.
from all the standard ones. You'll see I have like, the Decca tapes, or I have,
Mm.
this specific like Live at the Star Club in Hamburg. Like it's
Oh,
just that
nice.
big. And then I have a whole library of books that many of them still need to be read and dove into, but
Then
again,
you get the next
there's
one,
so
and
much.
you
There's so much. I'm like, I need to sit on a book. Like after I read a book, I'm like, I need to sit on it for at least a day or two before I even attempt to dive into anything else. But I've
right.
got that and really just, whatever vintage merch I can get my hands on. I mean, I have so many t-shirts as well. That's
Mm.
becoming a problem considering the
Yeah,
fact that I hardly wear some of them. And I'm like, the pile is growing. But it's really
right.
whatever I can get my hands on. I'm like, if I can find it for a good price, if it can fit anywhere in my room, then I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I can definitely relate on the t-shirts. Whenever I go to a concert, I'm like, I like getting a shirt because it's like, oh, I can, this is
Yeah,
from that concert. But then like I start wearing the shirts over and over again, and then they start to fade. I'm like, okay, I got to retire this shirt and not if I wash it again, you know,
struggle.
it's cooked, as the kids say. Um, I've got this. I love Sergeant Pepper's one of my favorite records, and I'll get this shirt from Amazon, but I don't know if that's how they manufacture it. But like after like maybe 10 washes, like it starts to fade
Yeah,
and I have to get a new one. So
patient. So I've
I don't know if
stopped
it's just
my shirts because they start to look like that, and I'm going, I don't want to ruin it any further.
right.
So what am I supposed to do?
You mentioned
You
Oasis. Are
tell
there
us.
any, oh, I'm sorry.
Now I'm talking to the people. I'm saying, if you guys know,
Oh
please tell
yeah,
us.
what we could do to like I mean I saw Paul in 2022 and I mean even that shirt started to get like I'm like I guess I can't wear this one much more because like it's starting to get a little I don't want that one to get messed up. I don't know, is he
I'm gonna go on
when he
tour
make
again, so we can get new ones.
right exactly. I'm like please come to North America again. I want to, though if he played now and then live and I saw that live, I don't know, you know, like
Yeah.
that would probably hit me.
Try hearing it from the streets of New York when you're outside of the Bowery Ballroom and he's right in there. You hear the concert clear as day. I'm going, this is close enough. This is fine.
Right. That was
Like,
crazy how he just announced those shows. Just,
it
I
was the
know he was
most
in town
stressful week
for
of my
SNL.
life.
Yeah.
And I did not think that one show was going to happen, let alone three.
Three.
I'm
Yeah.
going,
And
it is too
the promo
cold for me
art,
to go for tickets.
the promo art was super cool.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Now I wish I had gotten one of those t-shirts. I tried to get one of my friends got into the show, and I was trying to see if he'd be able to get me one, but I think at the merch stand they were limiting it to one per person, and I'm going, okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Makes sense. At least that you know you probably legit fans are getting them rather than,
Exactly.
I tried to get the George Harrison All Things Must Pass record store day, and they were sold out very quickly. So,
Still looking on
you know,
eBay and they're all upwards of
yeah,
$300. So I think I'm gonna
yeah, I'm
wait
like
until that hype dies down and then it
right.
gets.
Now you mentioned Oasis earlier. Are there any other bands you're into?
I love Queen. I love Motley Crue, Rolling Stones, Aerosmith, Oasis.
Nice.
That's those are the big names I can think of. But really, like I listen to pretty much all kinds of classic rock music, all different bands and artists. And what gets annoying is when I'll say that I love another band and everyone thinks that I love them on the same magnitude as the Beatles. And then they start,
Right,
testing my knowledge and I'm going, whoa, 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 whoa. Some bands I'm like, I'm just here for the music. I'm not
right.
fully invested, but like throwing out names like that, I'd say the next closest bands would be Motley Crue, Queen, and now Oasis, because they're the
Yeah.
bands that I'm going, wait, there's so much. Like I know there's so much history with all bands, but then it's for some reason those select ones that, they hit deep and I'm going, wait, I actually want to know more. Please tell me more.
Are you gonna be able to go to the Oasis tour? Have you tried
I
to?
got my tickets.
That's
I
awesome.
got my tickets. I'm ready. I'm probably, especially now that I'm learning more of their music now, I am probably going to collapse. I'm already trying to plan, like, I'm like, what songs do I think they're going to put in the set list? What songs do I want to hear that maybe there's a slight chance, now it's the guessing game.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I would say same for me. I don't really have any bands that definitely are that level. I try to get into some, like I'm, you know, learning a little bit more about the Stones. I saw there's a Simon and Garfunkel's traveling show that came around. What obviously wasn't them. It was like a tribute group, and we really enjoyed them. So I mean, I like the folk stuff. I love Bob Dylan. I'm seeing him in July.
I was naming bands and I completely forgot about Bob.
Yeah, Bob is such an he's interesting. He's such a like
Mystery, and that's what I love
right,
about him.
right.
I'm like,
He
I want to
doesn't
try to figure you out, and I know I never fully will, but that's what makes it fun.
he did not go to accept the Nobel Prize, but he went on Pawn Stars, So he's just
Bob
I don't
Dylan,
know.
ladies and gentlemen.
You're never gonna get like he will never do anything like how Paul's done carpool karaoke. You will never see Bob Dylan do anything like that.
He might. You never know his next
He
move.
could, he could. So he's fascinating. And then obviously, with the Wilburys, I saw ELO in September, which was cool.
Me too.
So Jeff Lynne, there. Oh, you saw them?
Yeah, at Madison Square Garden. I was thinking,
Okay,
okay, if
that
I
oh,
go
that was
on
so
tour,
cool.
if I have the opportunity, I'm going. So I went
Yeah,
and it was fun. I
well, I know
enjoyed
that's
it.
what they're like. This is a farewell tour, so that was pretty cool. I know, and I was a little like speculating because like I think the last time they toured, Danny showed up, and I was like, oh, is he gonna? But he's actually going to be there for the last show, I believe, in Hyde Park.
Yeah.
So
No, going, do I have to fly back to London now for that? Thankfully, my
that might be
budget's
worth it.
no.
Yeah, it's expensive.
My
So
budget and my job say no.
right, I'm in a teacher's budget, so like like I saw Stevie Nicks is going to be in Columbia, which is like an hour and a half away from me. I'm like, that'd be cool, but like, I don't, you know, these
You gotta
concerts
pay.
get expensive. You know. Um, well, this has been awesome. And as we're just wrapping up here, I just want to talk about like where can people keep up with you? Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, where are all the
All social
places.
platforms. If you just look up my name, you know my name, look up the number.
Yes.
No, but if you search Skylar Moody on anything, I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, a little bit of Twitter, lost a bit of a following, but that's a story for another day. But I'm on there. YouTube, I don't post much long form content anymore, but I do have some things that go up occasionally. So I'm all over the place. And
Nice.
you can
That's
go
so
to
cool.
skylarmoody.com if you want to know more.
Oh, nice. Didn't know you had a website.
It's
I would
not
definitely
super official, but it at least like keeps everything condensed in one place.
nice. I'm definitely enjoyed talking to you. This one. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention this earlier. You've got this awesome the like the weekly Beatles news.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
how
news and
long does
mystery.
that how far in advance do you plan that? I mean, is it just like based on what's happening? You just changed, or is it
I
like
try
do
to
you have an
I
idea
try to
or
plan as much in advance as I can. At least history is easier because I can just go and start, looking up the week and going, oh, what happened this week in history? And I kind of pick and choose, the biggest things or whatever has the most interesting story. And I do have to do a little bit of research with that and, to help like because I do the research and then I script it, based on what I'm reading. I try to make it fun and engaging, but also informative. So I'd say that one's definitely a lot more work because then news, I kind of just, pay attention to whatever headlines are coming out during the week or if any big announcements happen. And then it's just me relaying the news and going, oh, here, this is happening in real time. Here, this happened. Here, this
Yeah,
happened. So that's easier. But it definitely, both of them keep me on my toes. But that's
yeah,
good. That's how you know you're staying
keep it
informed.
interesting. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been really fun. I love
Thanks
anytime
for
I can
having
just like
me.
geek out about the Beatles. And like I said, I've really enjoyed, keeping up with your content. You're doing awesome work, and I know it can be a lot, but like whenever you're feeling like, oh, am I doing a good job? You're doing great. So,
Thank
just
you.
keep it up. And I know
I
you're,
appreciate hearing that always.
yes, yeah, we need that. The affirmation is nice. You're doing great
Always.
things, and I always definitely you're one of the first people that pops up on my feed a lot. So
That's how I know
keep
I'm
up the
doing
great
something
work.
right.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Eventually we'll figure out what happened in India.
Yeah,
Um,
no, that's a video that I just posted.
yeah, yeah, that's what had me.
We don't
Yeah,
we don't know, but we can try to guess.
right, exactly. Well, Skylar, thank you again so much. This has been really fun.
Thank you.
And anytime you want to come back on, talk Beatles stuff, open invitation. And
Always what I'm
yeah,
here for.
sounds good. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
All right. And peace and love, as Ringo says.
Yay! Come